Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss information about college entrance exams, in particular the SAT and ACT. I'm Vincentia Wright. I'm the lead counselor at Shadow Creek High School, and my partner tonight is Robin McCann. She's the lead counselor at Alvin High School. Just like Anna said, please feel free to jot down your questions. We'll be monitoring the chat as we go, but we will also open up a Q&A section at the end and try to answer as many questions as we can before 7 p.m. So our agenda for tonight will be a couple of different points and topics. So again, think of all of those questions so we can answer as much as possible for you. We're going to be talking about preparing for college. How do you prepare your student for these entrance exams to put their best selves forward when it comes to the admissions process, as well as scholarships? SAT versus ACT, which should your student choose? Should they do both or just one? Registration and accessing scores. What's a good score? What should your student be shooting for when they take these exams or assessments? What are the benefits of taking the PSAT and MSQT, which our district offers twice for our students to take? What's the timeline for PSAT and SAT? Accommodations and English language learner supports that are available for both of these assessments. How should your student go about improving their skills and scores? College Board recognition programs, as well as Alvin ISD resources. And just a reminder, please make sure your mics are muted. So now I'm going to turn it over to Robin, and she's going to begin with information about preparing for college.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for being with us. When we think about preparing for college and how that relates to the ACT and the SAT, we need to think about the importance of these tests in the application process. Because of COVID, many schools have gone to what is called test optional right now. This means they are not requiring the ACT or SAT to apply for freshman admission. Although some schools are saying they may stay test optional, many will not. So these tests are still very important. The best advice we can give you is if your child is able to take an SAT or an ACT test, we would recommend it. In preparing for testing early in high school, you can start by taking the PSAT each year and using it as a tool for improvement. You can actually use the results from your PSAT and see what questions you answered right, what questions you answered wrong, and use that as a tool to start studying. You can also link your College Board account with Khan Academy and actually have a personalized study plan. The overall best thing any student can do is to take each and every class as seriously as possible in order to gain as much knowledge as possible for future courses and even for their testing. Now, let's move on to the ACT versus the SAT. Some very common questions we receive would be, which test should my child take? Why should they take the ACT or SAT over the other? And does it even matter? Today, we're going to go over some factual information regarding the SAT and the ACT. Let's start by looking at what we know about these two tests. As you can see in the graphic, the tests are approximately the same length of time, with a few slight differences in the sections. Mrs. Wright will be going more in depth regarding each section of both tests later in the presentation. Here are some things that we have learned from the Princeton Review regarding the testing. Both the ACT and SAT are generally covering the same topics. Both tests are used for college admissions decisions and sometimes for awarding merit-based scholarships. There are colleges, if you look on their scholarship site, They have ranks of scholarships based on your testing scores. They move up by the higher testing scores. Most colleges do not prefer one test over the other. You can take either or. Neither test is really harder than the other, but different students tend to do better on one or the other. The biggest difference on the SAT and the ACT would be that the ACT has a science section and the ACT has a science section. I'm sorry, I don't know if I said that wrong. And the SAT actually has 2 different math sections. Also, the SAT has done away with their optional essay. There is no longer an essay included with the SAT test. Your student, in order to figure out which one is best for them, they can do practice tests of both of these, or they could actually decide that they're going to take one of each. When you get this actual recording or the PowerPoint, you're able to go to this Princeton Review article, and it will lead you to some practice tests for SAT and ACT. The registration process for both SAT and ACT is very similar. You must first create an account before you begin the registration process. This is something that's very important. You want to make sure and be extremely careful when creating the account so all the information is correct. It is a difficult process to try and fix the errors regarding your personal data. So make sure to double check everything you put in the system. I just had a senior this week come in and say, my birthday's in the system wrong. I can't get it fixed. I don't know what to do. So that's something you want to be very careful of. Once you've created your account, you must then begin to register for the test date you have chosen. There are a series of questions that you will answer before actually choosing your test date and your location. It's important to make sure you choose the location that you're comfortable with, whether it be at your own high school or another high school. You will pay for your test, and then you'll upload a photo into the system, and then you'll print your admission ticket. Your ticket is extremely important, so you want to keep that in a safe place to make sure you have it on testing day. One thing that is very, very important to remember about registering for the SAT or ACT is the fact that there are fee waivers available for any students that are on the free or reduced lunch program through the school. You are able to take up to 2 SATs for free, 2 ACTs for free, and that can even help you apply to college for free. So that's very important if you qualify for free or reduced lunch program. Now, accessing your scores. Once again, you would log into your College Board account or your My ACT account, and you would go to the score reporting portal or site, and you can click on your latest test scores. When you access your scores, if you did not send your scores before testing, so let's say you registered and you decided, I don't want to send my scores yet, I want to wait and see how they are. You can then go back and send the scores later, but it will be for a cost. If you send your scores when you actually sign up for testing, you can send, I think, 4 free score reports, and you can do that up until about 7 to 9 days after registering. But once you've taken the test, you will have to pay to actually have the score sent later on. Something that's interesting that has changed is that ACT is now providing super scoring, what we call super scoring, for anyone that's taken the ACT more than one time. Super scoring means you take the best scores from each test, and those are the ones sent to your school. Now, that doesn't mean the school wants them that way, and every school has their own policy. But once you get this PowerPoint, you can click here and learn more about actually what super scoring looks like for ACT. Now, SAT has super scoring as well, and they also have another option that we're going to watch right now so you can learn more about it.
Score Choice allows you to select your best SAT scores and send them to the colleges you're applying to. Make sure you're logged into your College Board account to use the score reporting tool. Simply type in the name of a college, university, or scholarship program and click search. After selecting where you're sending your scores, you can start using score choice. Just click Choose Scores next to any of the colleges in your list. In this example, Anywhere College requires that you send the highest section scores across all the dates you've taken the SAT. May shows a higher math score. March shows a higher evidence-based reading and writing score. Both scores are pre-selected based on the college's score policy. This is your opportunity to confirm that the scores that you want to send are going to the schools you want to send them to, in agreement with each school's policy. Before sending any of your SAT results, it's best to check with the college or scholarship program to confirm their score use policy. For more information on score choice, go to sendsatscores.collegeboard.org.
Okay, so back to accessing your scores. As you can see, both ACT and SAT are now super scoring, which is a great thing for the universities that actually allow that. But you want to always check with your college and make sure what type of test scores they're looking for. Okay, some reminders for test day. You want to be sure and watch for any emails that may be sent regarding any testing changes. Sometimes the weather, we have either a hurricane, a freeze, something like that, and the SAT or College Board will actually shut down your testing center. The way they communicate with you is through the email that you put in the College Board system. So you want to make sure you have access to that around the time you're going to be testing. It may be the night before they do this. It could be the morning of. So always have that email available. Be sure to show up in plenty of time to your testing site. Make sure you know how long it's going to take you to get there and give yourself plenty of time to get there. You always want to make sure you have some form of ID, such as a license, a passport, a school ID, etc. It
You have
cannot.
a school ID? Yes.
What was that? Okay, I'm sorry.
You're okay. Somebody was unmuted.
Oh, okay, sorry. So yes, you must have a physical ID in your hand. It cannot be a photocopy from your school. It has to be something that shows your identity. Being a previous SAT and ACT supervisor, I know that is the hardest thing to have to do on the morning of testing, is turn a kid away because they didn't bring their ID with them or their admission ticket. So you want to make sure your child has some sort of ID before they go to test. Also, you always want to make sure you do have your ticket for admission. And the best thing you can do on that morning, you make sure when you print this ticket out that you chose the right school. I've seen that before where students show up at the wrong school. They thought they chose the right one. And you also want to put in the address into your GPS system that is on your ticket, because some schools are so large that students may go to the back of the building rather than the front. So you want to make sure you have the correct address to go to that morning. Just give yourself plenty of time and you won't have a problem. Remember to bring your calculator, and you want to bring 2 number 2 pencils, wear comfortable clothes, and leave all your personal items or prohibited items at home, such as your AirPods, a smartwatch, etc. Okay, one of the most asked questions we get is, what is a good score? A good score is hard to determine. It just depends on what you're looking for. Every college has a different set of criteria that they allow for automatic admission into their college. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Looking at the SAT, the highest score possible for an SAT is 1600, which is the sum of your evidence-based reading and writing plus your math scores. Each section is worth a total of 800 points. So when you receive your score report, you will get your score along with a percentile ranking from 1 to 99. The way to understand your percentile score is as follows. If you get a composite percentile of 76, this means you scored higher than 76% of students that took the test. If you received a percentile of 47 just on the math section, this means you did better than 47% of test takers on the math section, etc. Colleges may sometimes use your percentile scores to compare with other applicants for admissions purposes, but that's not always the case. Each college is so different. The best thing you can do is research the admissions page of the college or university you're interested in and see what types of scores they are looking for. And I'll give you an example of that in just a minute. But looking at this SAT score report with percentiles, this is an example of a score report in which this student scored a 760 on the evidence-based reading and writing score. Down here, it says they are in the 99th percentile. That indicates that out of all the students that took the test, they are at or above 99% of students. The same over here with the 790 in the math tests. Looking at the ACT, the scoring is so different. The highest ACT score possible is a 36. Each section of the test has a score that ranges from a 1 to a 36, and the composite score is the average of these scores. The ACT scores scores you in the areas of English, math, reading, science, and then you have an overall composite score. This chart is showing the percentiles of the various scores received. Remember, the percentile is how well you did compared to other test takers. An example would be as follows. Let's say you scored a 26 composite on your ACT. This means you scored at or better than 82% of students taking the ACT. So I would consider that a pretty good score. Each school is different in what they require for assured or automatic admission. Below, I took an excerpt from one school that I looked up, Texas State University, just as an example. And this is what they would take for assured admission. What they're saying here is, if you're in the top 10%, there's no minimum score. So as long as you take your test, you're in the top 10% of your class, you are automatically admitted. If you're in the first quartile of your class, which the students can know their quartile if they ask their counselor, if you're in the first quartile, you need a 20 ACT score. That also translates to Texas State also said in the top quarter, you would need a 1000 SAT score. So every school is different. For instance, A&M, top 10% is automatic, but if you're in the top 25%, you would need a 1360 on your SAT or a 30 on your ACT. So those are very different numbers, which just shows you that each school is different. Okay, some things to know right now. Number one, many universities are still test optional. You want to be sure and look at your school and their testing requirements. Number two, remember, you can take either the ACT or the SAT or both, and you can take them more than once. And number three, even if your school is test optional, meaning they don't require it, many times your SAT and ACT scores can benefit you in the area of scholarships, and they can even exempt you from needing to take any other college entrance tests, such as the TSI, which is the Texas Success Initiative, which is the college entrance test, depending on how well you score. So if you score high enough on an SAT or ACT, you don't have to take that TSI test once you get to college. There's many benefits to taking the SAT or ACT. Okay, so we talked about SAT and ACT. Now we want to talk about the benefits of taking the PSAT before you actually get to the SAT or ACT. Taking the PSAT in 8th and 9th grades is great practice for the future and knowing where your strengths and your weaknesses may be, so you can target those in the future. Once again, you can get a personalized plan of what you should work on for future testing through the College Board and Khan Academy. The 10th grade PSAT NMSQT is a true indicator of where you stand and what you should work on before you actually get to the 11th grade PSAT NMSQT and even the SAT in the future. You can actually use, another benefit is you can actually use your PSAT scores from 10th grade. If you're interested in taking dual credit classes, you can actually use your scores to get a waiver that would mean you would not have to take your TSI test. I put an example of what you would have to score in the 10th grade test to be exempt from the TSI. Now, this is only for dual credit purposes, not for college admissions. Your 10th grade test can also qualify you for the National Merit Review class for more intensive instruction and preparation for the 11th grade NMSQT. That is by recommendation only based on your scores. So the 11th grade PSAT, the NMSQT, is, I said the most important, that's probably not a good term, but it is the most important when it deals with the scholarship involved. And you can receive special recognitions and scholarships based on your scores. There's more to come regarding these programs from Mrs. Wright. This is also, the PSAT NMSQT is just a great resource to teach you how to test, your time management, and being ready for the SAT in the future. So now I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Wright, and she's going to share about the actual exams with you.
Yes, but before we get started, a couple of questions came up in the chat just to address real quick. Once you have created a College Board account, you don't need to create another one. So that would be for creating one for AP exams, for PSAT. Once you have it once, you don't have to create another. So another question was if your student did Duke Tip back in elementary school or junior high. If you didn't create a College Board account, because I know with Duke Tip, you have to go through the Duke Tip portal. But if you have created one, you do not need to create another.
Can I say something? The PSAT, I asked this question yesterday of our advanced academic specialist. The PSAT information, the College Board has it stored, but it won't connect to you until you do create that account. So once you do, all of your testing will go into that one account. You don't want to create more than one account, like she said. Thank you.
Exactly. So from our PSAT that was just taken, if you haven't created your student, make sure your student's creating the account so that they will remember the actual login and password. Make sure that they go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and get started now talking about each exam and each section, just so you can see the similarities and differences between the two. So we'll start with the SAT. So just like Ms. McCann just said a moment ago, the SAT is composed of the reading, writing and language, and math sections, but notice that there are two math sections for the SAT. There is the math calculator section and the math no calculator section. Next slide. All right, so we'll start with SAT reading first. So notice the time frame for these assessments. A lot of our students haven't had the opportunity to take time to test. So that's why practice is so important when it comes to the SAT and ACT. So for SAT reading, students have 65 minutes to complete 52 questions. And one specific tip, if you don't remember anything else, make sure you tell your student you answer every single question. Every question should get an answer. But the SAT reading section focuses on skills and knowledge of what is learned every day in class. So it's not anything new that they haven't seen, and it's focusing on everything that they've been doing since elementary school when it comes to reading. So some quick facts about the SAT reading section is that it's all multiple choice and it's going to be based on the reading passages that are available to them. Some passages are paired with other passages, so there may be some comparisons from one passage to another that students will have to do. And remember, there's a time limit. So again, practicing means so much with helping students to get through this section. There will be informational graphics such as tables, charts, and graphs that students will have to interpret information from. One good thing is that there is no prior topic specific knowledge required. So students don't need to know physics or astronomy or chemistry or anything like that in order to be successful on the SAT. It is strictly a skills-based assessment. And again, as Robin said earlier, the reading test is a part of the evidence-based reading and writing score that your student will receive. So in particular, the type of text that students will see, one passage is going to be from a classic or contemporary work of US or world literature. So towards the end, I'm going to show you an actual resource that you can go to so you can see some of those types of texts that could be used for the actual SAT and your student can practice reading them. One passage or a pair of passages from either a US founding document or a text in the Great Global Conversation. It could be a speech or it could be an excerpt from the US Constitution, a selection about economics, psychology, sociology, or some other social science, and two passages are going to be science related. So the key theme here is, yes, there is some fiction with classic or contemporary work, but majority of the passages will be nonfiction. Next slide. So the next section is the writing and language section. Students have 35 minutes to complete 44 multiple choice questions. And the questions are embedded within 4 passages. So still reading and lots of reading and passages to get through these questions. But the difference between this section is it asks the students to be the editors of the text. So they are going to do 3 things in this section. They're going to read, they're going to find mistakes and weaknesses, and they're going to fix them. And there are a couple of ways that they're going to do it. But the good thing is that this isn't anything different than students have been doing since elementary school. So they've been revising and editing texts since they were little. So it's, again, just building upon skills that students have learned all along throughout school. So some questions will require students to look closely at a single sentence. Some questions may ask them to look at the passage as a whole and to interpret it based on the author's meaning. They may be asked to choose a sentence that corrects a scientific chart. The passages or sentences that the student will improve can range from arguments to nonfiction narratives, and the information can range from careers, history, social studies, the humanities, and science. So again, it's focusing a lot on nonfiction. Next slide. So next we come upon the SAT math section. And again, remember that there are 2 sections for SAT math. If you look down at the bottom of the presentation here, there is a no calculator section and a calculator section. And notice the time frame for each. So the no calculator section has 25 minutes. There are only 20 questions. The calculator section, 55 minutes, 38 questions. So the no calculator section is focusing on your students' math fluency. How quickly can they get through basic math? And then for the calculator section, it's more of application. So with the calculator, you want to make sure that your student brings their own calculator for test day. And it should be a calculator that they are accustomed to using too. Please don't go buy anything fancy if they don't know how to use it. It's not going to help them. The calculator is supposed to be used as a tool to help them go faster, not to hold them up. So within both sections, they are assessed in 3 different areas: fluency, conceptual understanding, and applications. And embedded in each of those are 3 types of mathematics: the heart of algebra, which focuses on linear equations and systems; Problem solving and data analysis is about being quantitatively literate. The Passport to Advanced Math features questions that require the manipulation of complex equations. So here we get to more Algebra 2 concepts. There are some additional topics in math where your student may need to refer back to junior high, late elementary, when we talk about converting ratios and probability and percentages. So a lot of times, a lot of students have a hard time going back to the more simplistic math processes, especially if they've moved on to more advanced math by the time they get to their junior year. So the math test is a chance for students to show how well they carry out procedures flexibly, accurately, efficiently, and strategically, and how well they problem solve. So again, practice, practice, practice. And with that in mind, the next slide, we have some links to some sample questions for each section. So again, once this presentation is emailed to you, you'll be able to click on each of these links and see sample test questions from each section. Tonight, we're quickly going to look at a reading sample question. So once you click on the link, you can see here that this passage is adapted from a text that was originally published in 1911. So a lot of our students aren't reading text published from 1911. So this is, again, practice required so that students can get through the text, and the vocabulary is going to be different. So you want your students to be accustomed to that type of vocabulary. So one quick tip or strategy, this is different from a STAR test. It's timed. So students are going to have to get through all of this text very quickly. So one tip or strategy I always give, read the question, read the answers, then go back to the text to skim and scan. So it's very different than what strategies they use just for, say, a STAR exam. So again, practice, practice, practice. All right, so again, you can go back to those links and there are questions available for writing, math calculator, and the math no calculator. So one tidbit, when your student is practicing, make sure that you or they are timing themselves for each question. Okay, next question. Next slide, I'm sorry. So now we're going to talk about the ACT. So the ACT has different sections, some similar, some different, but there's English, math, reading, and science is now incorporated into the ACT. So the ACT English section is similar to the SAT writing and language. So this is again where the student becomes the editor of the text. So an actual ACT English test contains 75 questions and they have 45 minutes to complete 75 questions. Students need to be aware of the writing style used in each passage. They need to be able to consider the elements of the writing that are included with each question. Examine those answer choices and make sure that they are selecting the best answer choice. Students have to make decisions on how to revise and edit text, and in particular, the topics that they should be focusing on when they're practicing: topic development, organization, unity and cohesion, effective language use, sentence structure and formation, punctuation, and comma usage. So those comma rules that teachers teach are definitely going to come into play on this assessment. Okay, next slide. So the next section within ACT is the math section. So notice the time frame here. Students have 60 questions, 60 minutes. So we're talking 1 minute per question. And this is the only math section for ACT, whereas SAT has 2. And on the ACT math section, students can use a calculator. So the math section for ACT emphasizes major content areas that are prerequisites to entry-level courses in college math. So specifically, the ACT focuses on more recent math for students, pretty much starting with algebra. So students should be advised to read each question carefully, choose to use the calculator if it helps and it helps them to go quicker. Make sure they're solving the problems efficiently, locating their solutions and answer choices, and basically checking their work. Students are going to be assessed on their skills in number and quantity, algebra, functions, geometry, statistics, and probability. And students should be able to show how well they can synthesize and solve complex problems, as well as being able to interpret, understand, and improve mathematical models. And again, one question per minute. All right, next we've got the ACT reading section, which is 35 minutes, 40 questions. So this section will focus on the ability to read closely, reason logically, and integrate information from multiple sources. So the reading test measures from 4 different areas: key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, visual and quantitative information. So key ideas and details will require students to read the text closely to determine central ideas. The craft and structure asks students to determine words and phrases and their meanings, analyze the author's word choice, and analyze text structure and what's the author's purpose and character's point of view. Integration of knowledge and ideas requires students to understand the author's claims, differentiate between fact and opinion, and use evidence to make connection. And then visual and quantitative information is when students have to use those tables, charts, and graphs in order to interpret information. The great thing about this is that all of this is happening in their classrooms already. So it's so important to make sure your student is always utilizing the skills and strategies being taught in class and is working hard to make sure that they are improving upon them. Right. The next section is the ACT science section. So again, a major difference from SAT. So if your student is more science prone and loves science and understands it, especially the experimental part of it, this may be an assessment they want to try. So 35 minutes for 40 questions. Students this section will measure the interpretation, analysis, evaluation, reasoning, and problem-solving skills required in natural sciences. So this test measures from 3 different areas: the interpretation of data, scientific investigation, and the evaluation of models, inferences, and experimental results. So a lot of this section is looking at lab reports and making sure that the student understands how to interpret and analyze data. So for interpretation of data, it asks students to manipulate and analyze the scientific data in tables, charts, and graphs. For scientific investigation, it requires students to understand experimental tools, procedures, and the experimental design process. The evaluation of models, inferences, and experimental results asks students to judge the validity of scientific information and be able to formulate conclusions from that information. So here we get into a little bit of more content specific knowledge that would be helpful on this assessment, not required, but definitely helpful. The content includes biology, chemistry, earth, space sciences, and physics. Advanced knowledge in specific science courses is not required, but background knowledge in general introductory science courses is recommended, in particular that experimental design process. The same thing they've been learning again since elementary school: independent variables, dependent variables. Scientific information in this assessment will be viewed as either data representation, a research summary, or shown as conflicting viewpoints, and students have to see which one is the most valid. All right, the next and final section for ACT is writing. So a difference between ACT and SAT. Remember, Robin said earlier, SAT no longer has an essay option. ACT still does. It is 40 minutes for students to write one essay. Students are given one writing prompt. The writing prompt will describe a complex issue, and it provides the students with 3 different perspectives on that issue. So based on the information received, students have 40 minutes to write an essay based on their own perspective from the information that they have received. One good way to practice is to practice writing with different purposes for different audiences and with a time limit. And again, one great way to practice is by reading nonfiction text. So we also have some links for ACT practice. We're going to view one again with the ACT reading practice question. And there are multiple questions here. So from here, you can scroll down a little bit and we'll see that this text is a little different. This one comes from the Men of Brewster Place, and it's written in 1998. So you can see the variability between the text that's given. Again, the same strategy can be used here. Read the question, review all the answers, then go back to the text to skim and scan for the best answer. Okay, so here is a quick video we're going to watch with information pertaining to the time frame for students to take the actual SAT.
Oh,
Taking the SAT 2 times will help you own your own future.
There are 7 different SAT test dates you can pick from.
For me, I took the SAT in the spring of my junior year.
I've already taken SAT once.
After the first time you take your SAT, you can get your results and you're able to study and have a curriculum that's designed specifically for your weak points.
The second time around, I ended up getting a higher score. 67% of students actually improved their score the second time around. Take the SAT in the spring of your junior year. Practice, be sure to go to official SAT practice on Khan Academy. You can even test again in August or later in the fall of your senior year. Go to sat.org to register, practice, and more.
Anna, I'm going to answer a couple of questions that are in the chat while we're doing that. One question says, where do we obtain the scores for PSAT that we took a few weeks ago? Again, your student needs to create a College Board account and their scores will be in that account. It takes about 6 weeks from the test date. So probably most likely late November, early December is when they'll receive their scores in their account. Let's see. So the next question is PSAT is only for 9th, 10th, and 11th, and SAT only for 12th graders. We were just about to go over a timeline, but generally, Alvin ISD gives all of our students the opportunity to take a PSAT, which is a practice SAT, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. We recommend that students start taking either the SAT or ACT the spring of their junior year. That way they have multiple opportunities to continue to take it even into the fall and spring of their senior year if they still haven't achieved the score that they are looking for admissions into the school that they are applying to. The next question, anyone can take the SAT from, yes, anyone can take it. Students can take the SAT and ACT as many times as they want. There isn't a time limit on it. Schools don't frown upon it. In particular, you're going to send in the score that you want, right? So they're only going to see what you send in to them. So there is no limit on how many that they can take. The next question is, do 10th graders take the SAT and ACT? Yes, they can. One thing I would make sure that we kind of talked about with SAT in particular is Algebra 2. Those are critical skills that students are going to need to be successful on either of those assessments. So I would definitely say after they've taken Algebra 2 and their reading skills are up to par and they're ready, there's no harm in doing it, but they are taking the PSAT, which is a great way to already see how they would do on the actual SAT. One question says, do we need a college account for 8th grade? Yes. If you want to see your College Board, your student scores, definitely go ahead and create an account. Is there a way to track your students' ranking? Ranking won't be available for students in Alvin ISD until after their 10th grade year. I think we kind of answered that. Would you repeat when PSAT scores? I don't want to give you the specific date for it, but I believe it takes 6 to 8 weeks. Generally, if I remember correctly, PSAT scores are like late November, early December. They should be available, but you can contact your advanced academic specialist on campus and they can tell you for sure. Thank you, Selena. She said December 7th. Okay. So there was a question about this on the chat, so hopefully this will help. Alvin ISD offers several opportunities for students to practice for the SAT. So the PSAT 8-9 is offered in 8th and 9th grade and allows students to get a baseline of how well they would perform on an actual SAT. 10th grade students take the PSAT NMSQT, which is the first opportunity that students can begin to earn College Board recognition, and I'll talk to you more about that. Again, it's another opportunity to see growth from year to year, and hopefully that score is increasing so students can understand how they need to practice and prepare for the actual SAT. The same exam is given in 11th grade, again, the PSAT NMSQT. Scores from this assessment can start the process of qualifying students as National Merit Scholars their senior year. So during the spring of junior year is when we generally recommend that students take either the ACT or SAT or both. Students will register for the ACT through act.org and they register for the actual SAT through their College Board account. Alvin ISD does offer juniors. So again, Alvin ISD offers 11th grade students the opportunity to sign up for SAT School Day, where students can take an actual SAT for free during the school day. Sign up for the SAT School Day is different from a regular Saturday SAT. So sign up for SAT School Day, the free one that the district offers, is generally through your campus's advanced academic specialist. So at Shadow Creek, Manville, Alvin High School, you're gonna go to your advanced academic specialist website or contact them for when that sign up will actually start. So at Shadow Creek, the advanced academic specialist is Vanessa McDonald. At Manville High School, it's Rebecca Root, and at Alvin High School, it's Michelle De Leon. So you're going to contact them if your student is a junior for a sign up. So the date for Junior SAT School Day for this year is March 2nd, 2022. Again, view your campus's Advanced Academic Specialist website for more information about signing up. Students have additional opportunities in the fall of their senior year or in the spring to sign up and register for an actual SAT or ACT again if needed. So there's the timeline. So a couple of questions came up. Can my student take it earlier? Can they take it before their junior year? Yes, but you want to make sure that they have taken courses that have provided them with the skills to prepare them if they're going to take it earlier. All right, so next we're going to talk about accommodations. So in general, students approved for College Board or ACT accommodations have met the following criteria. They have a documented disability. Their participation in College Board assessments is affected by the disability. The specific accommodation requested supports the need. So students must request for College Board assessments and or the ACT for accommodations, for College Board assessments and or the ACT in order to receive those accommodations on the assessments. So it does not matter what accommodations your student has in place on their campus. If your student has not requested the accommodations to College Board or to ACT, they will not receive the accommodations on those assessments. So students should have a current IEP or 504 plan with accommodations currently in place. You want to contact your school counselor to help request appropriate accommodations for College Board and or ACT assessments. Parents must sign a consent form to request the accommodations. And then your SSD coordinator on campus will then submit that request for you. Be sure to view deadlines for the accommodations request because it takes 4 to 6 weeks for either of those entities to approve the accommodation, to approve or deny the accommodations. So you want to make sure that you have enough time before the assessment to make sure that it can be approved. So before requesting accommodations, make sure you consider which ones your student will actually use on the assessment. So a student may have assessments on campus that may not be feasible for them to use on the assessment. So you want to really talk to your 504 coordinator or your art facilitator on campus to make sure that you all, along with your student, are discussing the accommodations that they feel would best support them on this assessment. Make sure that you note the accommodations can affect the length of the assessment. And you want to make sure that your student is able to sustain the testing for the amount of time that the accommodation may add to their assessment. Okay. Next one. All right, so the next one is for English language learner support. So again, accommodations would need to be requested if an ELL student is asking for extended time. But ELL students may have the directions printed out for them, and they may use their personal bilingual dictionary. It will have to be checked first to make sure there's nothing that isn't necessary for testing in the dictionary, but they can use it on the assessment. All right, so now we get to the good stuff. How to improve skills. So improving skills leads to improved scores. So each of these links on this page are hyperlinked for you to go to be able to find practice assessments, test taking tips and strategies, and more. So we'll kind of start with under the practice column. So there are free resources available on each of these practice sites. Be careful, some sites will ask you to sign up for classes for a fee. I'm not pitching any certain company or anything like that. So each of these sites have free opportunities and resources for test prep in addition to paid resources. So these are up here because each one has some free information and practice stuff for you. So in particular for SAT, collegeboard.org, you can download practice assessments. There are apps for SAT and ACT. So if you download a practice test from College Board, there's an answer sheet that is with the test. Then you can use the app to actually scan the answer sheet and it'll grade it right there for you. Again, you can also link your College Board, your student's College Board account to Khan Academy, and it will start an individualized tutorial plan with questions for each section for your student. Princeton Review is another company that has some paid classes that you can pay for, but they have free opportunities and resources as well. ACT.org for ACT is paired with Kaplan. ACT.org has a test prep study guide and practice tests that you can download for free as well. Kaplan.com has some paid courses. Again, they pair with ACT, but they also have a free online course that you can take first before you pay for anything. And then we have Huntington Learning Center. They do have courses that you can pay for, but there are also free practice tests that you can sign up for through them as well. So some tips and strategies. I have 3 websites here. The first one is Magoosh. It offers several free online SAT prep resources. It's a blog. There are practice tests, study tips, and test taking strategies here. that you can also view on the company's YouTube channel. Eric the Red is a New Jersey-based math and physics tutor who publishes SAT and ACT prep resources on his website. On his website, you can find math facts. Remember, with SAT, we have a section that deals with fluency. There are formulas and strategies specific to SAT skills. There are math quizzes as well. The critical reader. So this is the resource that I was speaking about earlier to help your student read more text that's seen on SAT and ACT. So the critical reader publishes an array of test prep books and free SAT prep resources. Students can take quizzes on SAT and ACT grammar rules that will help with the English for ACT and the writing and language for SAT. It also provides a comprehensive list of resources that SAT makers have often used to create the reading section, which can include publications such as articles from National Geographic, historical documents, and famous authors. And finally, the critical reader kind of goes with my next topic is read more. And make sure it's something your student is interested in for sure, but you want to make sure that they're increasing their reading stamina. These passages aren't necessarily going to be something that they are going to be happy to read about, but you want to make sure that your student is prepared to read nonfiction text and to read critically and think logically when they are. So the more that they practice, the better they are, more comfortable they are with the actual assessment. So the critical reader is a website that can help with that. All right, so the next slide is about College Board recognition programs. So students can earn College Board recognition beginning in 10th grade, as I stated earlier. This is not a scholarship program. The College Board national recognition programs create pathways to college for underrepresented students by awarding them academic honors and connecting them with universities across the country. Students who take the PSAT, NMSQT, 10th grade, or AP exams and are African American or Black, Hispanic American or Latinx, Indigenous, or attend school in a rural area or small town may be invited to apply for academic recognition as a part of the College Board national recognition programs. Students will receive academic honors that can be included in college and scholarship applications. Students will also have will receive outreach from colleges, and they will receive it if they sign up for the College Board Student Search Services. So for PSAT or SAT, if they sign up for College Board Student Search Services, they'll start receiving information from different colleges and universities. This program connects students with universities and scholarship programs across the country. Universities and scholarship programs use the student search to find students awarded recognition. And so the next program is the National Merit Scholarship, which Robin spoke about earlier. It's an annual academic competition for recognition in college undergraduate scholarships. The competition is open to all high school students who meet the published participation requirements. And you can review those by going to the National Merit Scholarship website. Scholarship winners are chosen on the basis of their abilities, skills, and accomplishments. To enter the competition, a high school student must take the PSAT, NMSQT, which Alvin ISD allows all of our students the opportunity to be able to do so. So out of 1.6 million students who take the National Merit or the PSAT, NMSQT, approximately 50,000 of them will receive some type of recognition for the exam. 16,000 of that 50,000 will become semifinalists. 15,000 become finalists, and then about 7,500 students actually receive a National Merit Scholarship. So next slide. So in addition to the opportunities to take the PSAT multiple times, SAT school day their junior year, fee waivers if your student is on free or reduced lunch to be able to take the SAT or ACT twice for free. We also have a couple of additional resources. So each high school campus offers the advanced SAT prep course. It's a semester course. We generally gear it towards juniors, but there may be occasions a 10th or 12th grader may be able to take it as well. Another resource is your advanced academic specialist. So I saw in the chat earlier, are there going to be tutorials or prep sessions? Each advanced academic specialist on the high school campuses are offering some type of tutorial for ACT or SAT. So you definitely want to view their websites to see when and how they are offering these tutorial opportunities. And then you want to make sure you're reaching out to your student school counselor. We have information available. We have practice tests in our office and general tips and strategies just to help your student prepare and be ready to get the score that they need on those assessments. And again, just like Robin said earlier, it's going to be based on where does your student want to go.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I truly apologize for my computer shutting down and updating at this very moment. I'm so sorry. We appreciate every one of you joining us. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can email either one of us at the addresses here on the screen. We can also take a little time to answer a few questions in the chat at this time.
Okay, I'll take, I think we kind of answered one. Will Alvin and I be offering ACT, SAT classes? We offer the advanced SAT prep course. And again, check with your campus advanced academic specialist for what tutorial opportunities or ACT or SAT prep that they will be doing on your student's campus. How often is the class ranking updated? Again, ranking is available for students the summer after their 10th grade year. And then it is updated again, Ms. McCann, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
So after 10th grade year, everyone gets a new rank for 10th grade after their 10th grade year. So we rank in June. We will not rank again until after the first semester of the next year. So that would be juniors and seniors getting ranked at that time. And then we rank one more time for seniors after the third 9 weeks for their final rankings. But then the juniors get their next ranking in the summer. So I hope that made sense. It's twice a year once you start getting ranked until your senior year.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And then the next one, question is a question about the NMSQT. So when we say PSAT, NMSQT, that's one test. That's the same assessment. And the NMSQT stands for National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So when students in 10th grade and 11th grade, remember that's where they can start qualifying for College Board recognition. And 10th grade is the first year they can do that with the PSAT, NMSQT. So that's all together. So that's PSAT. We are going to email this information to you along with the recording at the end.
Yes.
So again, we've kind of gone through the differences between the SAT and ACT content. We can go back through it. Once you go back through the presentation, we can, you can email us if you have specific questions about each one, but generally SAT has the writing and language, the reading and the 2 math sections. ACT has the English, reading, science, and math. Okay, so we have a question about the National Merit Scholarship. Is it based solely on NMSQT? No, it is not. So there are some other parts that go into it. So your student would have to take the actual SAT. So their SAT score actually comes into play for the National Merit Scholarship. So the NMSQT or PSAT NMSQT starts the process. And it's based on their selection index that they receive on the assessment. So key trick here, once you have your College Board account and your students' PSAT and MSQT scores come in, you're gonna scroll to the back page of their score report. And there is a selection index. So that index number, it doesn't look like a regular PSAT score. It's a 3-digit number. So that number is what's going to determine if they can move on in the process for national merit. And your advanced academic specialist on campus is the key person to talk to you about what the selection index is and if it's a qualifying score.
I see Stephanie K is asking about the SAT course. She's never seen it offered. It is a 1-semester course and it's offered one time in the day. So it is second semester. So it's offered on all 3 campuses. I know we have a section of it, and well, everyone does. So yeah, it was on the course selection sheet or in the course guide.
Yes. And the advanced SAT prep course is a free course. It is free. It is limited. It's first come, first serve because we don't have a lot of sections of it. So that's why it's super important that you are utilizing the resources that we talked about tonight and speaking with our advanced academic specialists or viewing their website, because they're still going to be providing opportunities for tutorials in prep time. So it's not all lost if they don't get into advanced SAT prep. There's still a multitude of resources and people on campus to help prep them for the assessment. But the advanced SAT prep class is free.
Is that all?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Well, we
Thank you so
definitely
much,
appreciate you all for coming tonight. And again, feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any additional questions. We appreciate you and your partnership and helping us and allowing us to help your students along their journey to post-secondary success.